Guess what? Today's Sunday. Hey, Opa. Well, okay. As of the video's recording, today is Sunday, where you're going to see this on Monday or on Tuesday. And this is a good sign because I was really considering doing the whole review change up because the last two times are coming out on Monday. But the official is now back on Sunday. Hopefully it maintains form on Sunday and we can have an appropriate official review come out, let's say on Monday and Tuesday, which is what I'm aiming for essentially. So this is lovely. This is very, very lovely. What some folks out there in the ecosystem of One Piece fans might also find lovely, right, is a particular doctor in this chapter of One Piece. And if that's the case,
I'm Michael Jordan. Don't do drugs.
if you want to see my reaction to that particular moment in this chapter, then you can check that all out on my Cole Requiem channel for that live stream reaction. And if you don't know, now you know, there is anime reaction content on my Kingu-san channel edited, but it comes out first, much earlier, on my Patreon. Links in the box below to that anime reaction content. Again, all links in the description box down below. As per usual, we're going to break down this chapter by the three main components. We have the pacing and the structure of the chapter. We have the character components of the chapter. For this chapter, the largest part. And then finally, we have the story progression components for this chapter. So let's break it down step by step, piece by piece. And ultimately, at some point, if you are enjoying my review of this chapter, then hit your boy with a like, with a subscription, and of course, click on that bell to join the notification squad. So for this chapter, the pace and the structure. So good. For this chapter, two simple parts. Part one, first half of the chapter on Egghead Island, where we follow Luffy and company. Part two is a stretch of sea somewhere in the New World with Law and Blackbeard. This is a resounding yes. Yes from me for this chapter of One Piece. Just like the last chapter of One Piece, the pace and the overall structure of the chapter is really good. We're not jumping all over the place like a madman. It's just two main parts of focus, easy for the vast majority of readers to digest. Though, I will say this, the second half of the chapter, where we focus on Law and Blackbeard, we do in fact jump ahead 3 times in time in this section of the chapter. The first one is when Law undoes his feminization disease. Not milady, no fedoras in sight. Thank you, yo, I'm telling you, TCB scans.
Not the cap.
As I said before in my first take, ain't no way it was actually officially called milady. Just straight trolling. The feminization disease. So when Law undoes that, we then skip forward in time. That's the first time. The second time is when Von Aga teleports Burgess onto the island. After that, we skip forward in time. And the third time is when Law makes his room to slice the mountain that Burgess threw at himself and the crew. And I actually didn't notice the first time around reading the chapter that Law made the room to actually cut them out into pieces, but he did. I thought that he actually teleported them to safety. No, he actually makes that room again to cut them out into pieces. So outside of the second half of the chapter, where arguably the structure does get somewhat like a little bit choppy, in of itself, I don't think it's a big deal. And overall, structure-wise, this chapter I thought was really damn good. Now, for the longest section of this chapter, the character components for this chapter. Number one is Atlas. So as far as I understand, on the official One Piece Instagram, it was confirmed that Atlas's number, the 06, was a mistake in the last chapter. And in this chapter, we do see the corrected number that's actually written on Atlas's clothes. 05 is on her uniform. That's the first thing. The second thing, in this translation of the chapter, Atlas states that her, quote, job, end quote, is violence. Her job is violence. So this could be a troll or a joke, but in the last chapter, we see her title, and her title is violence. Just how for Lilith it's evil, and how for Shaka it's good. But when Alice is leaving, she does punch the hologram dragon monster again. Very odd on her part. So she could be, let's say, in a similar position to the Frankie family back in Water 7, where the island is full of shipwrights, but the Frankie family specifically were known as ship dismantlers, and they were best known for breaking things down. So Alice might be in charge, let's say, of breaking down bad projects, or let's say even testing new projects or weapons durability to see if they can hold up. So that is Alice for character. After Alice is going to be Monkey D. Luffy. This one is a bit of a stretch here, but no pun intended, but I'm gonna say anyway. So while Luffy has been able to see the future for about 2 arcs now consistently, this is the first time Luffy has ever seen the future for a quote non-attack event, end quote. But I'm going to put a somewhat in there as well, because the Kuma Cop in this chapter did intend on attacking Luffy, which is true. However, Luffy sees the future for the Kuma Cop before he starts to run. And the Kuma Cop running at them in of itself is not really an attack. So now you may say, hold on, that's actually a thing? Like, that's the first time Luffy's ever seen the future for a non-attack based event? Yes. If you go back through Wano Country and you go back through Hokage Island, every time Luffy is indicated to use Future Sight, it's always right before an attack is going to happen, and he's able to actually see what they intend to do in the future. And that's all actually stated in chapter 894, when Luffy has that flashback of Rayleigh during the time skip. And also in that same flashback, Rayleigh states that Luffy is particularly attuned to the emotions of living things. But the Kuma Cop is a pacifista. It's a cyborg robot, not really living per se, but Luffy is still locked in and tuned in to what the Kuma Cop is doing. So it is, I think, a tough call on some fronts, fair enough. But I'm gonna put it in there regardless for his character, because I think it is a sign, at least a small sign, of him improving with his observation hockey skills. After Luffy is going to be Jewelry Bonnie. So Bonnie's relationship with her father, Bartholomew Kuma, is so strong that she cannot attack the pacifista version of her father, or will let even Luffy attack that pacifista. And she seemingly also acts like a child by saying the word daddy, like repeatedly in this chapter, but I could be reading into it too much. I just don't think that most people past the age of 20 would call their parents mommy or daddy. But that being said, who am I to judge? Either way, we know that she loves her dad so much that she won't even attack a robot clone who's going to attack them and try and kill them because that robot clone looks like her father. After that, we have Blackbeard up. Blackbeard looks like he used Conqueror's Haki for some sort of attack at the beginning of the second part of this chapter. There is a big explosion in the sea, so it kind of feels like it's a quake attack of some kind, but that does not change the fact that we do see black lightning sparks emitted from the water explosion. And there is that Blackbeard say, ah, as that happens. So the details are iffy and unclear, but for the time being, I'm going to say that there is a good chance that Blackbeard does have Conqueror's Haki infusion, and could potentially infuse that ability into his own Quake Fruit ability. After Blackbeard, Law. Trafalgar D. Voltaire Law. Law has, confirmed now, powerful enough Haki to undo the effects of the feminization disease, therefore to a degree, some definite effects. Law isn't someone, quote, relatively well known for strong Haki, but folks forget things about Law. Like for example, Law did use hardening back in Dressrosa to block attacks from Doflamingo in chapter 768. And I think he actually blocked the same attack that Dofi used to cut Fujitori's meteorite into pieces. But we can go even deeper for one Trafalgar D Water Law. Because what's really intriguing here is that Law talks about his past experience with Yonkos, which allowed him to negate these devil fruit effects. What Law is talking about specifically is chapter 1009. He said back then that Big Mom and Kaido had such strong haki that he couldn't move them in his room. But one of the key things here is that it's unclear if he's talking about just armored haki, because we actually don't see armored haki in any capacity on their bodies. It could be a combination of armor haki and conqueror's haki. Therefore, in this case with Law, not saying it's confirmed, but it could be a hint of some kind that Law actually has conqueror's haki. But again, not saying it's confirmed, there's more so a hint. We'll see in the future if that's actually the case or not. After that, we have Doc Q. Doc Q has a new power, the sick fruit. He is a sick human and can spread diseases. And no cap, the diseases are actually pretty scary and pretty strong. So the feminization disease can actually change someone's fundamental chromosomal makeup. Yo, that is normally impossible to actually change the chromosomal makeup of an individual unless we're talking about, let's say, natural born genetic disorders and defects. So things like too many sex chromosomes or too few sex chromosomes or other mutations like that. So Doc Q could genuinely give someone Down syndrome through his diseases. He could literally make someone genetically dumber through a disease. Low-key busted. Doc Q, low-key busted as all hell. However, according to the official translation, once someone can break out of this disease, they make antibodies. And those antibodies, just like the disease itself, would begin to spread to others. So what does that mean? That means that when Law broke out of the feminization disease, the antibodies were created on the spot for that disease. And as a result of that, the antibodies start to spread to the other members of his crew. That's what I'm gathering here from the official translation. After Doc Q is Von Auga. Von Auga has the warp fruit. And so far, it seems like a version of Law's ability, but without the need of a room restriction. He can also warp other people like Burgess so far. That is Von Auga. After Von Auga is Jesus Burgess. So Burgess has the strong fruit. Hey, like your boy.
Got that right.
He has the strong fruit, and he rips from the ground an odd-looking mountain, and he throws said mountain at the Heart Pirates. So it is hard to tell at this point in time how big that mountain is, but as far as I can tell, it appears to be several times bigger than the giant iron ball that Garp threw at Luffy and company at the end of the Enies Lobby post-Enies Lobby saga, and the iceberg that Diamond Jozu threw during Marineford at the Marines. And the key here, I think, is looking at the small picture of when Burgess first ripped the mountain off of the ground and looking at those weird rock extensions on the side of the mountain, because the lowest extensions are going to be right above Burgess. But again, at this point in time, it is kind of hard to tell. So I'm going to rely on the anime in the future to clear that up. And then finally, after Burgess is something even stronger than the strong fruit that he has, who is, of course, Stronger, the mighty steed of Doc Q. And Stronger has a mythical Zoan ability, the horse fruit model Pegasus. This is a straight up play on Pierre from Skypiea. Pierre from Skypiea is a giant spotted bird who ate a horse, the regular horse ability, and he was a, quote, Pegasus. But Stronger, the actual horse of Doc Q, ate the actual Pegasus ability. That is amazing, and that is the overall character components for this chapter. And now finally, we have the story components for this chapter. And even though I missed it last week, we'll get to it now. The first thing is going to be the cover story content. Wow. Wow, wow, wow.
Crazy.
Last week, it was simply put, Chocolate Town was frozen, and now we see this week, Cracker is also frozen in the midst of Chocolate Town. Cacao Island got a Winter Wonderland makeover. Pudding is also kidnapped by the two individuals that likely arrived in chapter 1046, when Chocolate Town was first raided. It's very likely Kuzan. That is for damn sure. Very likely, because I know some folks want to say it's not Kuzan, it's somebody else. Have my doubts at this point in time. Big, big doubts. So it's probably Kuzan, and then someone else from the Blackbeard crew. Possibly, and very likely, a Titanic captain. Whether it's going to be Laffy or it's going to be City of the Rain, these two pulled up, they took care of Cracker, and they took Pudding. It is what it is. The Big Mom Pirates right now, down bad. Down horrendously bad. So after the cover story Insanity, we go out to town here, this SSG Egghead Island town, which FYI appears to be one of the towns in the outskirts of the island, because based on the end of the part 1 section of this chapter, when there's a big explosion, the explosion occurs on the far side of the island. So Atlas leaves to do her job of violence, and then people start to emerge out of nowhere, like out of the mist, from the town, and everyone is dressed up in some sort of cyberpunk 2077 gear. Bonnie actually presumes that they're all researchers, given how it's a research lab, but some of these people are clearly child size. They're clearly kids. One option here is that these kids, and potentially everyone in town, are all automata. They're all robots. Just how if you put a hoodie on the robots in the NL cover story, they would probably be mistaken for kids if you couldn't see their faces. And the same thing could apply here. And then also, some of the people have fields of study written on their clothes. Like one has petrology, which is a branch of geology. One kid has history or historian written on their hoodie, and so on and so forth. So that might signify what fields of study someone is in or their own specialty. And then, after all this, we have Luffy and the clique getting new outfits. But of course, in the process, they get chased by this Kuma cop since they didn't pay for their clothes or their food. But these clothes are lightweight, and apparently can actually make the wearer of the clothes feel lighter in some way. Bonnie says that her shoes make her feel like she's floating on air. And it does remind me in some way the German 66 stuff. I do wonder if they can actually fly with this. Probably not, since Atlas needs a jetpack to fly around. But I do wonder if there are some flotation device properties that are mixed in with its clothes. Luffy also knows how he's feeling very breezy and very cool, despite the clothes appearing like it's winter fashion. So I'm willing to bet here that just like the island itself, that has the AC, the air control, the clothes themselves have some sort of built-in AC, air control. So let's say it's cold outside, these clothes automatically adjust to the temperature of the environment that they're in. Afterwards, the Pacifista police chase down Luffy and company, but Bonnie prevents Luffy from actually attacking due to, of course, emotional daddy reasons. And the latest actually blows out a section of the internal area where they're staying at. So that is it for the first half of the chapter. The second half of the chapter for story, the Heart Pirates versus the Blackbeard Pirates. Blackbeard was actually lurking on an island knowing that Kid, Law, or Luffy would come straight to him. So of course this stems from what chapter? Chapter 1056, when Luffy, Law, and Kid were deciding where to go, and Law chose northeast. According to him, going northeast, given the actual compass that we see in that chapter, going northeast meant that he'd be going the furthest east compared to the other two there. Blackbeard also had the same idea, a very shrewd and smart individual, lurking at the furthest east island from Wano country. There he was, and he found Trafalgar D water law. When Blackbeard attacks their submarine, it actually seems that the submarine was deep underwater, like probably several thousands of meters underwater, because Law's submarine is so deep underwater that if the hull continues to break and more water floods in, the water pressure would crush the submarine. Therefore, as a result, they had no choice but to prepare for battle and surface. It's a very similar concept that we've seen before in the past. For example, in chapter 607, Zoro is going to head out underwater to try and like deflect the underwater landslide. However, Robin stops Zoro from doing it because she claims that the water pressure would have killed Zoro immediately if he actually went out. So the ideas of the dangers of water pressure are brought back up again in this chapter. But in the process, in order to fight the disease that Doc Hugh all gave them, Law unleashes his haki to snuff out the death ability. While this is not new, because Law himself experienced the same thing in Wano country, I think some folks are misunderstanding what this means for the haki and devil fruit relationship. So this is going to require another video in the future that I'll do this week, or let's say next week. And then after all of that, after all of the fighting and mountain throwing and teleportation through warps and sicknesses and major devil fruit reveals, we have the last main component for the story progression, and it's big. Blackbeard, Law, face off. Blackbeard wants the road poneglyph rubbings that Law has. It's very likely that Law, Kid, and Luffy shared all of the rubbings of road poneglyphs that they had collected. And I think it's implied, but not shown. So I'm assuming, of course an assumption, but I'm assuming that Law has all 3 of the road poneglyph rubbings that the Straw Hats have. And Blackbeard wants those. But what's even more important is that Law, I think the chapter says, same back to you. In this fight, winner takes all. So Law thinks that Blackbeard may also have a road poneglyph rubbing. The last load poneglyph rubbing in the possession of Blackbeard? Potentially? That is very, very possible. Particularly when you go back to One Piece chapter 1053.1, the Road to Laugh Tale chapters, where in that special chapter, one of the main options to where the final load poneglyph would be Full of Lead Island. So maybe Blackbeard already has that rubbing of the last load poneglyph. And that is it for the story progression components for this chapter. Overall, final thoughts. I'm gonna keep it simple and straightforward. The pacing is really, really, really damn good. The kind of components, pretty damn solid for sure. And the story progression components. Who would have seen Blackbeard make that play on Law? I think the vast majority of One Piece readers had no idea that Blackbeard was gonna pounce on Law the way he did, lurking in the shadows, Black Panther style. Wakanda forever. Listen, man, that was impressive. So, story progression wise, I think it's a big hurdle to have someone like Blackbeard go after someone like Law, and potentially also have a road poneglyph rubbing himself. Big plays on Oda when it comes to the story components for this chapter. Simple, but very effective. So this chapter rating, I'm gonna give it an 8.5. I'm gonna say it again. This is gonna be an 8.5 out of 10. A damn good chapter of One Piece. And it didn't need any Transfalgar. All you need is some damn good content involving this all day, every day, Blackbeard. And it just flows from there. 8.5 out of 10 in my book for this chapter.